Say you like the looks of stag grips, but you're just too cheap to spend $200, $300, $400 for a set. The only indigenous antler game in our area is white-tailed deer, and it doesn't produce an antler big enough to make grips out of. But it's possible to reproduce the texture of the antler by scrubbing it clean and spraying it down with PAM cooking oil to release the silicone molding material. Mix up some silicone and paint it onto the antler. This is a slow cure type of silicone, and it took overnight to set up, and here I'm cutting and removing the skin from the antler. I discovered pretty quick you couldn't just throw the skin into the mold and expect it to work. So I devised a way to draw out a template to cut the skin to size before I put it into the mold. I reduced the size on the top and left and right, and let it run all the way to the bottom. Typically the stag grips are cut thin on the outside edge. I was going to make two templates, but I decided that the one template could be used in left and right side, so I only made one. I prepared some medallions the same way as I did on making the other grips. I repeated a mistake by using a felt tip marker to mark the outline around the template onto the skin. I found out again that the ink absorbed into the rosin into the final pour. I'm hoping that I can scrape that out whenever I shape the grips. I used a sticky glue to make the skin hold tight to the bottom of the mold. Also used it to hold the medallion in place. Here I'm mixing a 50-50 mix of the rosin to pour into the mold. On my last set of grips I used just a drop or two of the amber tint, and it wasn't even enough to make it show, so this time I used a half a capful of the amber tint, and it comes out pretty orange colored, maybe more than I needed. Here's real time watching the rosin set up, and kind of like ice freezing. It took a few minutes to get to this point, and I let it set for probably about an hour before I took it out of the mold. I hoped the skin would have stayed in the bottom of the mold so I could make a second set without making another set of skin, but that didn't happen. It came out on the grip. Smoky Dave told me if I maybe sprayed the mold with PAM again, it may have stayed in the mold and not stuck onto the grip. So I basically had to destroy the end to get it off. At this stage, you're about like stiff cheese or bar soap or cold butter. You can trim easily, but I usually going to leave them a lot of flashing on it so that when they firm up I can sand them better. I did something on this set that I didn't do on the other set, and that was flatten the back side so that it'll fit the grip frame better. Remove the back strap and remove the old grips. Make sure you don't lose that little spring and plunger that's right above that other little hole. I'm fitting up against the frame in the upper part of the grip in that corner and making sure I've got some overhang all the way around so I can trim later. I used the pattern tool to reproduce the curve inside the old grip and make the little block to put in between the two grips. Here's the filler block dropped into the frame to give it a check to see if it fits. I sanded off the oxidation off the filler block to prepare it to put in the acroglass to hold it in place. I'm applying a releasing agent on all the metal parts that it might come in contact with. This is a really good idea. I mixed up the acroglass per directions. I used one end of the stick to dip out the rosin and the other end of the stick to dip out the hardener. The directions call for a couple of minutes of stirring, and that's what I did. It was really cool in the room, so the setup time was really pretty long. With the left panel in place, I drew a reference line around the inside of the frame to place the block. I applied the acroglass to the grip and then to the little block, and then positioned it and set it in the frame. The last little step is to leave the stick setting in the unused acroglass so you can come back later and check to see how the progress of setting it up. I removed the grip frame, and I found that the best way to break loose a one-piece grip is to insert a screwdriver between the frame and the top block. I mixed up another batch of acroglass and prepared the area the same as I did on the left panel. I let the acroglass sit up really tacky before I started positioning it into place again on the lower side so it wouldn't run out everywhere. Once the panel had set up, I identified areas that I needed to trim around the edges before taking the grip frame off. Once again, I used a screwdriver to break the bond between the grips and the top frame. And then it was just a matter of trimming around the edges and cleaning up the nasty stuff. More cleaning up and blending around the edges. Rough sanding the edges with a 120 grit paper to remove the bulk of the extra stuff and to round the edges a little better. I painted the barky areas with a chocolate covered craft paint. I used an assortment of paper to sand down the grips. Now we're finally going to get to see what it looks like when it's finished. Well, here's the final payoff.